How are you doing today?
Good morning, Los Angeles! Thank you all so much for joining us at Beyond Influence Social Media as a practical tool for filmmakers. We are so excited to do a live recording of our show, Pero Talk, which you can catch on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. So today's conversation is really important to us because as people who work in both social and film, there's often a divide between them. You either work in one and not the other. But today, we're going to be asking, how do you utilize social media as a tool for filmmaking? So you're probably looking at us thinking, who the heck are these people? Well, let me tell you. I have right here filmmaker Monica Morser-Yagi. Yes, round of applause. She had a feature at LALIFF. I'm Carolina Reynoso. I'm an actor and a content creator. Woo!
And the life of the party.
I'm the life of the party, let me tell you. And a video producer and photographer extraordinaire, Alex Canales.
Also the best.
Also the best. And you're probably looking at these two chairs going, you talking to ghosts? No, we're not. Let me introduce to you Alexis Garcia and Ángel Manuel Soto. You want to give them a...
And
Hello.
Alexis is an Afro-Puerto Rican filmmaker currently based in Los Angeles. In 2022, she was selected to participate in LALIFF's Inclusion Fellowship, where she wrote and directed the Oscar-qualifying short Daughter of the Sea. To date, the film has played in more than 50 festivals and received 35 awards and nominations. Alexis was most recently staff on the animated series currently in development at Disney+.
Yay!
And fun fact, if it wasn't for Alexis, I wouldn't be sitting here today.
None of us would be sitting here today.
She was all of our boss at some point. And over here we have the incredible Ángel Manuel Soto. He is a Puerto Rican film director and VR content creator, and I know you've all seen Blue Beetle. I'm just gonna get right to it. I actually watched it last night just to get hyped up again. As we know, that is the first superhero movie to feature a Latin superhero, but also a Latin family, which is very important. He has also released a variety of short films, documentary shorts, and feature films, including La Granja and El Pujil. And both of these films were nominated for awards at various film festivals. And Ángel also directed Charm City Kings that had its world premiere at Sundance in 2020, where it did win a special jury prize for its ensemble.
Thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thank you for having me.
It's incredible how the world is changing and social media is evolving every second, right?
Yeah, there's a new update right now. Did you update your
Oh, I
phone?
did
I'm
not.
just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Social media is vast and it can feel easy to get lost in it. And there's a niche for practically everything you can think of. We do know that as a filmmaker or someone working in media, if you want to be an actor, whatever it is, your social media should reflect your work. And so we are curious to know, when you both started filmmaking and even now, how did social media come into play in building an audience along with your films?
Yeah, when I made my first film, social media didn't exist. And that film didn't go very far. It wasn't very widely known. I didn't have a lot of money at the time, so I could only enter it into a handful of festivals. And unfortunately, that film, didn't really take off in the way that the film I made, 10 years later did, which was really interesting to see the difference and just the power of social media and as an essential tool for filmmakers. If you're making a film, you have to be on social, especially if you're an independent filmmaker that doesn't have a marketing budget, it doesn't have access to super development funds, publicist access and that kind of thing. Get an Instagram handle for that film, whatever it is. My short film is going to be successful. Hashtag, whatever it is, and make a hashtag and stuff like that, and just start nurturing that and building an audience, even if it's just your family and friends originally.
What are your thoughts?
I mean, for me, I do agree. Because of the social media factor, friends of friends starts to notice, and so you start being able to have a community outside of your closest people, because you don't always have the best support accessible. So I do think there's a lot of power with social media, especially when established outlets won't pay attention to you. When the actors couldn't promote and we were all on strike, it was thanks to social media that the word really got out there. You know, the ones that created the hashtag Blue Beetle Battalion, like all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like those were kids, like nobody asked them to do any of this. You know, it came from their heart, from their passion for the character, and being able to just like support them in their content creation because their content is supporting me. So it's like it's reciprocal.
There is like a real community behind it that like will be your Blue Beetle Battalion, that will show up, and I think that's really awesome.
Community, right? Which I think is something that we often forget comes with social media. You're able to reach a lot of people without needing to actually be there in person. Could you talk a little bit about like building community as a filmmaker? Like let's say someone that isn't necessarily a rookie, they're already kind of in the leagues with their projects. Like what would benefit already existing filmmaker to be able to garner an audience using social media?
Just the way that social media it creates accessibility and like connects like-minded people is really incredible and inspiring. I think when I was making Daughter of the Sea, I started that Instagram handle. You know, we were able to build a fan base even while we were in pre-production. I'm based in LA, but we were going to shoot in Puerto Rico, and you know, I was like, we need to connect with local actors and local crew, and Instagram specifically became a really essential tool for us to be able to connect with that community. And even now, it's just like, now we're like, I'm ingrained in the community, the film community down there.
I feel like we're really talking about how you can use social media to connect with people that you wouldn't normally have access to,
Exactly.
and how it creates community among people with like interests, and it's a great way to find actors, find crew, find people that care about your project and filmmaking. And we really want to talk more about how social media helps to make things more transparent. Like when there's a film being made, there's what it looks like is happening with the film versus what's actually happening with the film. And with social media, you can be a little bit more honest about like what's going on.
Absolutely. I think the BTS is, you know, behind the scenes is one of the kind of like powerful things that people really love to be in the know about, because everyone's here for that gossip, that achievement. Like we want to know what's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, I tend to overshare, and that's not usually a good thing. But the thing is, like to your point, it is very heartwarming to see also how some people, and especially on the social media landscape, are so vulnerable, right? And and I think there's so much strength in that vulnerability, and you can see the passion of certain things, which allows you to really understand that the work that you do has an impact that transcends your closest people, and you will never understand. I would have never known the impact of a film like Blue Beetle if it wasn't for the honest reactions of people in social media. It's definitely a huge value to include the audience in the process, to show them what's behind the curtain, you know, show people that want to be a director what being a director really is.
Yeah.
You know, like the baggy eyes behind the makeup.
Yeah.
And I think that's always nice, you know.
Yeah, I think too, like that accessibility of showing, being able to share with people who might never be on a film set or might never have the experience of knowing what it's actually like to be creating this kind of art, is like, or maybe they're interested in it and want to eventually pursue it. I think that's one of the really beautiful things about social, is that accessibility. And that's a lot of the reason why I'm online too, is like, I want to see stuff that I don't have access to, that I don't, you know, that doesn't exist in my day-to-day life.
You know, I think that I learned about the industry and the directors share a little bit watching those, I don't know, some of you
The
might
special
remember.
features.
Yeah. The HBO first looks.
Yeah.
I miss special features.
That's the only reason I have live Blu-rays anymore.
I always want to, which is, you can make fun of me for this, but I always want to see what people are eating on set. Like I'm like, can you guys put behind the scenes of like, what are we eating today?
Yeah.
What's
you know?
on the crafty table
Yeah,
today?
what is snacks?
You
What are
can
the
share
snacks? I kind of want to bring it back to you guys mentioned the indie projects, right? And indie filmmakers. What are your opinions on crowdfunding online, using social media to crowdfund?
We definitely want to talk about crowdfunding because it is something that's become easier to do because of social media. I've crowdfunded for films, and I was telling them I have this kind of theory that you can only crowdfund twice, and the second time is if the first time went well, then maybe you can ask one more time. Because you can only ask your friends and family and your parents' friends and your siblings' friends and your old teachers for money so many times. But I do think social media is what makes crowdfunding more accessible. Like, there are people running very successful crowdfunding campaigns on TikTok, and they're like really hyping up their films, and then those TikToks are going viral, and they're making like double, triple the initial goal for their Kickstarter.
Sometimes that's the only way that you could get a project off the ground. So we're really lucky to live in an age where we can crowdfund and use social media to promote, but it is like, you don't just start a crowdfunding campaign and throw it online. It takes a lot of, thoughtful consideration about the content planning and how do we reach an audience beyond our friends and family, right? Like the most successful ones are the ones where you're reaching strangers who are like, man, I really this story resonates with me so much. Like, here's $20.
I always say send it to your mom, and she'll send it to her church friends.
Yeah.
And
That
in the church,
WhatsApp chat is blowing
church.
up.
right?
Yeah, hallelujah. We did it for Killing Pedro, and it was very exciting how that film got a lot of traction. The crowdfunding, like we got our goal in like 2 days.
It's amazing.
Whoa, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Unheard of.
It wasn't that we went to the newspaper to help us out; it's that the newspaper came to us, and that's how. And it was through the power of social media. So this alternative way of filmmaking, I think, and there's more stuff. Now there's the technology is evolving daily, and more ways of being able to make movies. Movies are getting more expensive to make,
Yes.
and we have to find creative ways of getting our stories out there. So by honing into the technology, into social media, into alternative ways of producing and financing, we're going to be able to create our stories and find those festivals that are going to listen to our stories. La Granja was a very hard movie to get out there, but once the festivals got it, the whole world saw it, and if it wasn't for La Granja and how hard it was to get it done, I wouldn't be here today. So.
Festivals like LALIFF.
It wasn't on purpose, the plug, but it is. Festivals like LALIFF are crucial for independent filmmakers to get their voice out and to create network. Like, this is like a physical social media or Facebook group for filmmakers.
Exactly.
So it's like, I think it needs to continue.
And also not even as someone creating content on social media, but who you choose to follow and take in their content. Like, the only reason I found out about LALIFF's Inclusion Fellowship the year I did it was because I followed them on Instagram. And if I didn't follow them, I never would have known about that. So it is important to just, like, any organization, any program, website, follow them on everything and turn the notifications on.
Yes.
So that if they have a program or something, you're like the first person to know about it.
I feel like there's a constant battle about like legitimacy on social media, especially as like, well, okay, I am a video producer and my content sometimes will come from a phone, right? Where I will be taking the most beautiful shots, okay? That cinematic mode, amazing, okay? But the new iPhones are coming out with 8K, like the capabilities are so advancing. And you had mentioned before about like, okay, filmmaking is getting more expensive. So do you feel like, and you said we're going to evolve, we're going to continue going, and it's not going to go anywhere. So like, when do you think it's going to become a little bit more like sophisticated? Like when we accept social media as an avenue for filmmaking?
Well, I think sophistication is very subjective.
Yes,
like
it is.
Sean Baker just won the Palme d'Or, and he did Tangerine on his iPhone. So I don't know. I think.
Yeah, it was an old iPhone too.
And it was an iPhone
wasn't
5
even
or
that
something.
good.
Like, it wasn't even that great. But hey, he told a compelling story.
Save your action thriller for when you have money. Tell a simpler story with the technology that you have, like, which is kind of what Tangerine was like this, following this woman around for an afternoon on Santa Monica Boulevard.
I like to tell people it's not the devices you use or the cameras you use, it's the power of you as a storyteller, right? You guys can quote me on that.
Copyrighted.
Well, those are all of our questions. We have 10 minutes left. If anyone in the audience has a question.
We got one here.
I just have a question about social media, sharing stuff that is project related versus putting out stuff that is more personal, and can you cross-pollinate and just do all of it, or should you focus like I'm telling the stories myself as a filmmaker?
At least for me, first of all, people have told me that I should separate. I feel like I'm splitting myself into two things that I cannot separate. I don't do it. I don't change. I don't split it. You know, that sometimes gets me in trouble. Sometimes it doesn't. I don't care. But she knows more.
No. I think that that's perfectly appropriate. It's a lot of work to separate like my professional ID from my personal. I don't have separate. The only thing I do is separate my projects from my personal. I think my social media has become a little bit more professional. Like I'm a little less willing to share more of my private life, and just because I have a lot of people that follow me that I don't know, and you can set up a professional website that is linked in your bio, and I think that's a better route that people can say, oh, wait, I like you're creating you as a brand. You're a brand on social media, and that brand includes not just your professional life but your personal life. And so I think it's like people need to be mindful about what they're curating to their audience and the kind of brand that they're creating. But I do think if you're making a film, to make that's like my number one piece of advice to other filmmakers who have asked me, like, I'm gonna make my first short, what's the first thing I should do? I'm like, get a social handle. That project at least has its own business, right? Like every film is its own business. You know, the bigger the budget, the bigger that business is. And if you could prove that you have a built-in audience across, for this short, for example, or across this many films, and it's like, oh, this person knows how to build a business from the ground up. And that is so valuable when you don't have a lot of money or a lot of resources to be able to hire a publicist or hire even a social media strategist.
That was a good way to put it. Thank you so much. Okay, I think we have room for one more question.
Or two.
Ooh,
We got the two. Oh, we have one in the middle.
She was like, me.
It's me.
I want to hear your opinions about how important are huge numbers, like being a digital influencer. We are seeing people that are not artists, but they have numbers and they are working in artist projects.
Yeah.
That's so weird for us.
Yeah.
I don't know how to.
No, that's a great
I
question.
love that question.
We hear you.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely speak on that because Pero Like is a part of BuzzFeed, and one of the reasons that I wanted to apply at BuzzFeed to work is because I'm an actor. I would go to even commercial auditions. I went to audition. I'm not afraid to drop names. I went to an audition, and they were like, okay, I went in, and they're like, oh, what's your Instagram handle? Give them my Instagram handle. They pulled it up, and they go, we're looking for over 30,000 for this commercial, I was like, oh my God.
It's really a problematic practice because you could buy followers. Like you could buy these followers, you could buy the likes and just put on a facade of having, you know, 1 million followers. If you put that person that has 1 million followers and they're not a good actor on screen, like you're gonna work with them, it's like you can't, there's not a lot to work with, and it impacts the success of your project later on down the line. You do have to have social media and you do have to post. It's like part of your job, unfortunately, is to get your face out there.
Yeah, and you're right about that. Like, I think Instagram, TikTok are great casting tapes.
Yeah.
I've also been in that position where they're like pitching people because of their Instagram followers. And like, there was this notion, I'm sure still out there, on the executive level, that if you hire somebody with 60 million followers, they will promote the movie because they're in it. And the truth is, most of them don't.
Yeah.
You know, most of them don't
Nice.
promote it. Maybe they put one story, but it won't be on their feeds, you know. And I think they're starting to understand that it's not paying off as much as they thought it would. So hopefully more people like us will fight the good fight so that they can find real talent like you to at least have a chance audition for a project. You know?
And I will say, I was recently casting for a film. It was for a comedic role. And a friend recommended this guy to me that he didn't have a lot of followers or anything, but he would post like comedic sketches of himself, like playing all the characters. And I was like, oh my God, he's so funny. And you know right away, like, okay, this person can do the role I'm thinking of because he's made a portfolio for himself online, and he did not have that many followers. He was just doing it so people knew that he could do it. And I did end up casting him, and he was hilarious. It was the
Yeah.
perfect choice.
Yes.
I think we have one more question.
I wanted to ask you, how do you deal with the languages? Like, for example, in my latest film, we're mainly speaking in Quechua, which is my indigenous language, and then in Spanish. And so when I'm dealing with the social media, I'm like, wait, this is in Quechua. Oh wait, but in Spanish, like in English. And I'm gonna make a TikTok or like, should I do it in English or in Spanish or like in Quechua? So if you can talk about it.
The main audience you want to reach, you make it in that language and then put subtitles. And in the caption, you have to translate or put it in the original language, then in Spanish, or then in English. That's unfortunately the strategy that I would use in approach.
Yeah, I say fuck it. Listen, like I speak English. I understand English. Like nobody can trick me. Yeah, it's like, you know, my dad was very adamant. Like my dad doesn't speak English, and he's like, you need to learn the language of the colonizer. So I did. But my main language is in Spanish, and I express myself in Spanish. And if I can learn a second language, they can learn a second language too. That's my attitude.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But with Quechua,
But for you, like if you're doing it in Quechua, if you, that's your heart, then say it in Quechua and put subtitles in English and Spanish. I'm sure people can read.
that, yeah.
But that's what I do. And if I write something in the caption, I put the caption in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. I'm sure if I feel like translating, I will. It doesn't draw me away. And I'm talking in English here, I don't know why. Because if it was for me, I would do it in Spanish. We are in a Latino film festival.
Yeah.
So if you feel like the message should be in Quechua, if Quechua is the language that you feel more comfortable speaking, it is a beautiful language. I would pay attention to that more than somebody that's trying to
Do it in English.
do it in English, unless English is your first language.
Well, yeah, there's this revival of decolonizing our languages, our religion, our spirituality, all of this stuff, and I think that's an important part of our generation's decolonization and deprogramming, is reclaiming our indigenous languages and our indigenous roots. So thank you for that comment.
Thank you again so much. Please make sure to follow us on socials. Thank you to Alexis. Thank you to Ángel. Muchísimas gracias. Lo agradecemos muchísimo. And to all of you, enjoy the rest of the film festival. If you haven't already, follow Better Like. And that's a wrap.
That's all right. Yes, thank you so much.
Bye. Have a great rest of your weekend, y'all.